It all begins with a narration about the 3 types of madmen you find on the battlefield. First up are those who've lost everything and are now just looking for an end to their lives. Then, there are the ones consumed by revenge, so much so that they can't see anything else. And finally, there's a different type, one that 2 soldiers are watching approach from a distance. The hooded knight begins to mutter some strange words from a scroll. This leaves the soldiers confused, unable to understand what the mysterious man is saying. At this, one of the guards loses his patience and yells for the stranger to get out of the way, but the hooded figure completely ignores him and continues his mysterious chant. The irritated guard then aims his crossbow, getting ready to fire at the man. However, the mysterious knight raises his hands, and magic begins to take form. Suddenly, a huge bolt of lightning is summoned from the sky, heading toward the forest. The 2 guards are completely terrified by the power of the lightning bolt. Next, the massive blast of electricity strikes the area with devastating force. The explosion is so powerful that the soldiers are sent flying, screaming for help. The mage's face is then revealed, and he is the 3rd type of madman on the battlefield. Here we learn that our protagonist's name is Ritsuki Kadueyama, and he had just been accepted into college. This was the exact moment he received his acceptance letter from the university, but as he was walking home, something unexpected happened. The young man didn't stand a chance and met a tragic, sudden end. The young man felt his life was going nowhere and thought everything would finally change in college. To think it all ended just like that, with his phone shattered on the ground. But upon opening his eyes, he realizes he's been reborn as a baby. He was now Wayne, a peasant's son, and his parents were startled by his black hair. As you'd expect, his new family of farmers was very poor. Besides his parents, he also had 2 older brothers and a little sister. While the others worked, Anne and his sister would look for food in the forest. However, some boys see him from a distance and call him a crow because of his hair. This makes the young man angry, since he didn't choose to be born with that appearance. He complains about finally being reincarnated, only to end up in such a poor place. At that moment, the protagonist notices something different happening around him. Then, a status window appears in front of him with the name N. Raven. The system begins to speak, but the boy gets a little nervous about the situation. Much to his disappointment, the status window says that he's a nobody. Anyway, the young man thinks he couldn't have done anything even with a system. His life would just be one of debt and manual labor, without gaining anything in return. After all, this was the life he had inherited from his peasant parents. Because of this, he couldn't even dream of having any profession other than being a farmer. The boy would have no chance to learn anything new in this life. He imagined how cool it would be if he could become a great knight, or maybe could use his talent to become a famous artist. The boy was sure he would do well in anything if he could just study, but he wonders if there's any place in the world that would accept him. His little sister watches him hungrily, waiting to get a piece of fish. So, the boy hands the food to the little girl, who thanks him very happily. Next, the girl invites him to have dessert, and her brother immediately agrees. The 2 then head towards a bush full of little red berries. On the way, the young man tells his sister not to go too far so she doesn't get lost. The little girl starts eating the berries happily, enjoying her dessert. He reflects that he taught her the word dessert a short time ago, and that she's grown up so much. But suddenly, the protagonist senses something strange and becomes alert. A massive bear emerges from behind the bushes, frightening the 2 children. The protagonist and his sister freeze, paralyzed with fear in front of the beast. Anne panics, not knowing what to do in that dangerous situation. The beast then rears up, roaring furiously at the 2 siblings. The bear then attacks, swiping with its sharp claws, ready to strike. At that moment, the boy hugs his little sister, trying to shield her from the attack. Suddenly, a bolt of blue light strikes the animal head on with incredible power. The bear cries out in pain as it's zapped by the mysterious magic. The beast then collapses to the ground, completely defeated. Stunned by what just happened, the boy stares into the smoke. A voice says that maybe they overdid it, a little with the strength of the attack. Then, a mysterious woman with glasses emerges from all the smoke. She adjusts her glasses and asks if this is the territory of Feldenberg. The boy confirms and wonders if she was the one who defeated the big bear. The woman then introduces herself as Aretus, a wandering mage. In is shocked to hear the word mage, as it was something very rare. He remembers that mages are powerful beings who appear on battlefields. They use elegant spells with gigantic destructive power. This makes him wonder what someone like that would be doing in such a remote place. The mage explains that she's looking for a boy with black hair in this town. She then asks if there's any other boy like that, and he says no, with a smile. The woman says it seems she's found the right person. The protagonist is confused and points to himself, not understanding anything. In a flashback, we see a hooded figure asking Aretus to find the boy. The person said that good things would happen if she made him her disciple. She sizes up the boy and wonders if she really should make him her apprentice. Then, the mage lets out a laugh, seeming to have made a decision about the boy. Anne thinks that he'd heard mages were eccentric, but she seemed kind. He remembers the incredible power she used to vaporize the bear. With that, the boy decides to ask the mysterious mage a question. The boy asks about the magic she used on the bear earlier. The mage notices his interest, and he says that seeing the magic was incredible. She says it's nothing special, and that anyone can learn it easily. The boy is surprised to hear that anyone can master magic. With a bit of hesitation, he then asks if he can learn to use magic too. The woman gives a mysterious smile upon hearing the boy's question. Then she says it's possible if he finds a good teacher and pats his head. She claims that Ain can also become a mage, and he imagines himself being powerful. Next, the woman offers her hand and says she would like to teach him. Aretus invites him to be her apprentice, and the young man stares at her outstretched hand. The protagonist realizes that this could be the chance to change his life forever. After all, a new path besides being a farmer is opening up for him. With that, the boy accepts the offer and shakes his new master's hand. And just like that, the protagonist's training begins in a beautiful, secluded house. The boy is shocked by the sheer amount of studying he has ahead of him. His master explains that the foundation of magic is learning the Meronius language. She managed to get permission from his parents and the local lord to take him on as an apprentice. With that settled, the young man says he's ready to give it his all and start his training. The two of them agree, and the youth's magical journey finally begins. He starts his studies, and a panel shows his progress at 1%. Over time, he advances to 27% while practicing the magic words. The studying intensifies, and the boy reaches 53%, buried under a mountain of books. After a lot of hard work, his progress hits 99%. Finally, he reaches 100% and masters the official language of magic. 7 years pass, and his training continues throughout that entire time. His master then informs him that his theoretical studies have come to an end. Now, older and more confident, he is ready for the next step of his training. A panel shows that he has become an initiate with the ability to manipulate the magical language. For the next test, they head to the peak of a very high mountain. Suddenly, his master pushes him off the cliff, and he begins to fall at high speed. The boy screams in desperation, asking if she isn't moving a bit too fast. He panics because, for the last 6 years, all he learned was the ancient language, not knowing what to do. The young apprentice just cries out for help as he falls. From above, the maid shouts for him to listen to the voices around him. The boy is confused, not understanding which voices she is talking about. He tries to concentrate, but he can only hear the sound of the wind rushing past him. At that moment, the youth begins to hear voices that seem to come from the wind itself. He realizes that the language he learned is the key to communicating with these beings. With that, a panel announces that he has acquired a new skill, air magic. After the test, he begins to understand the mysteries of great nature. His master teases him, saying he looked ridiculous while he was falling. She explains that mages borrow power by communicating with nature. The woman then says with a smile that this is true magic, leaving the boy deep in thought. The mage says that now he must listen for the next mysterious voice that appears. The boy agrees with a determined smile and accepts the new challenge. She then points at him and says they will start with water magic. The youth is then tossed into the water and tries to communicate with the aquatic spirits. Next, his master announces that the next element will be ice magic. Then, he appears inside a barrel in the middle of the cold, shivering uncontrollably. Exhausted on the ground, the boy hears his mentor praising his learning speed, but without giving him a break, she already points toward the next challenge awaiting him. An enormous fireball appears in front of him, leaving the boy terrified. He screams his tutor's name in desperation amidst all that heat. The voices of the fire wonder if they should burn the human who appeared there. Terrified by the situation, the apprentice can only scream for help once again. The training continues, and the next location is a dark, damp cave. Inside, he wonders if earth magic is the final element to learn. However, the voices of the earth speak confusing things that he cannot understand. The boy is left speechless, wondering what strange language that was. He then starts to think that maybe he doesn't have an aptitude for earth magic. Just then, a purple energy emerges in front of him while he thinks about training more. A skill window appears with bonus points to increase his proficiency. He realizes he is a player with advantages in this world and gives a smile. Since he doesn't understand the voices, the young man decides to use the points on earth magic. A blue light glows as he uses his points to strengthen his ability. Now he can hear the voices of the lava, which call him a little human. The boy understands that this is earth magic and that he needs to be careful there. With his goal achieved, he decides to head out and tell his teacher everything. To light the way, the young mage speaks the words to ignite a fire. He creates a torch and lights up the dark cave where he was training. Suddenly, a mysterious voice complains about the light he just created. The boy turns around, startled, and asks if it's the voice of the earth speaking. In the darkness, a pair of blue eyes glows, and a voice says it's not who he thinks it is. The mysterious voice introduces itself as the darkness, leaving the young apprentice frightened. Outside the cave, the night is peaceful under the light of the full moon. Meanwhile, his master is sitting on a rock, thinking about the next conference. Then, the boy comes running out of the cave, calling for his mentor. The woman sees him and says with a smile that he finally made it. With a big grin, he tells her that he even learned dark magic from the darkness. His teacher is completely shocked to hear her disciple's revelation. With confidence, the boy crosses his arms, and she asks if he really heard the voice of the darkness. She remembers that the darkness is a shy and fearful being, which leaves her pensive. Seeing her reaction, the apprentice asks if she's okay and why she went silent. The mage then calls him by name, and he responds promptly. She says in a serious tone, the time has come for them to head down the mountain. The youth asks where they are moving to, but she says that's not it. With a melancholy look, the woman explains that their paths part here. She then points the way and instructs him to go to Chronaleak and attend the conference. With a smile, she says that there he might find a chronomancer. If it is his destiny, the boy is confused by the sudden mention of space, time magic. Laughing, the master pats his head as she sees him looking so lost. In her thoughts, she believes that Ain has a natural affinity for mystery. That's why, if her hunch is right, he will be able to master the power of time. So, after a moment of silence, she prepares to say goodbye. Waving, she tells him they will meet again in 3 years in the city of Dorwald. The scene then shifts to a bustling city at sunset. The streets are full of people and vendors announcing their goods. Now wearing a cloak, the protagonist walks through the city thinking about the conference. He reflects on how unpredictable his mentor is but gives a resigned smile. Someone shouts looking for company to head north, and he remembers his instructions. Since he is free, the young mage decides he will try his luck and follow the group. He joins a group of mercenaries who are camped out in the forest at night. Sitting near the campfire, the young man observes the other members of the group. An older man approaches and asks if it is his first time traveling north. The protagonist confirms it, and the man then asks if he knows about Dragon Mountain. He explains that the place is famous because real dragons appear there. These creatures are extremely dangerous and fire powerful blasts of energy. The leader then asks if the youth knows how to fight, and he feels a bit awkward. With a sigh, the man calls him useless and asks what his job is. With a bit of nervousness, the boy reveals that he is an actual mage. The group leader is completely shocked by the unexpected revelation. His attitude changes instantly, and he begins to treat the boy with great respect. A hooded girl who was nearby watches the scene with a lot of curiosity. The other mercenaries are also surprised to learn there is a mage among them. The protagonist is confused by the sudden tension that has formed in the camp. The leader then tries to be friendly, offering more food and acting very kind. The young mage finds this whole change in behavior very strange. However, one of the mercenaries doesn't seem to believe that the boy is a mage. He and his friends start laughing, thinking it's impossible for a kid to be a mage. One of them even says that if he's a mage, then any stray dog is one too. At that moment, the hooded girl approaches to speak with the protagonist. She says that if he really is a mage, he should put the mercenaries in their place. The boy is confused, and she explains that they look down on anyone who seems quiet and weak. Therefore, he needs to show his power to intimidate them and earn their respect. That way, they will protect him at any cost during the entire long journey. The youth is left speechless, thinking about the advice she just gave. He reflects that he has never been the type to get angry and doesn't know how to do it. Meanwhile, another member of the group is eating peacefully near them. Suddenly, without any respect, the man spits into the boy's bowl of food. The young mage is shocked and very irritated by the mercenary's attitude. In that instant, the ground begins to shake, and the man wonders what is happening. The mercenary is terrified by the tremor and looks at the boy in fear. With his eyes glowing, the protagonist asks why he spat on his plate. The man is paralyzed with fear, stammering in the face of the young mage's aura. Then, he throws himself to the ground and begs the master mage for forgiveness. The man tries to justify himself, saying he was only trying to polish the plate. At that, the boy shouts furiously, telling him to use water to wash it. The mercenary explains that the river water is filthy and cannot be used. The mage is confused by the answer and asks him to repeat what he said. He explains in detail that the river is full of silt, parasites, and other disgusting things. Then the man claims that spitting is much more hygienic, and the boy is shocked. The bizarre phrase about hygiene echoes through the night, making everything feel very weird. The other mercenaries are also incredulous at their comrades' crazy logic. The protagonist cannot believe the hygiene standards of that era. Seeing the situation, he decides to solve the problem using a bit of magic. He murmurs some magic words toward the camp's bonfire. Suddenly, a fire spirit manifests, emerging from the burning flames. The men are terrified, not understanding what that fire creature is. The hooded girl also watches the scene, surprised by the youth's power. With a commanding voice, the mage orders them to go get water immediately. He calls the men filthy, and they realize the boy is truly angry. After the commotion, the night at the camp becomes peaceful once again. Meanwhile, a group of armed men approaches the location in secret. They find the girl the mage met, and one of them smiles maliciously. The group of men surrounds the young woman, who is all alone in the dark forest. One of them calls out to her, saying it's dark and that she should go with them. However, a mysterious figure appears and doesn't seem to like that scene at all. Suddenly, a masked man appears and embraces the girl to protect her. The men are surprised and irritated, asking who that guy is. Without warning, an arrow hits one of the men directly, knocking him to the ground. The leader of the group shouts furiously, asking how they dared to attack his man. Angrily, the leader yells for his men to attack, and they charge forward with swords. The masked man holds the girl firmly and calls the aggressors weaklings. Being carried upside down, the girl's eyes are wide with surprise. He then dodges the blows with agility, and the young woman holds onto him tightly. At that moment, he manages to escape into the forest, disappearing into the darkness. After a while, the mysterious protector sets the girl down carefully, but the pursuers realize she is running and shout for her to be captured. Far away in his tent, our protagonist is sleeping peacefully in his bed. He tosses a bit and mumbles in his sleep about never wanting to see spit again. Suddenly, a dark voice wakes him up, warning that humans are coming. The mysterious voice insists he wake up because the humans are coming. The young mage quickly gets up and senses a strange presence approaching. Suddenly, someone enters his tent, calling him Master Mage. It was the leader of the merchant group, who looked desperate about the situation. Meanwhile, outside under the moonlight, a fierce battle begins. The camp is being attacked by a group of masked assassins. One of the aggressors attacks a mercenary without any mercy. The assassin's leader steps on a fallen man and doesn't care about the losses. With his sword in hand, he orders his men to find the woman who escaped. Hidden behind a tree, the girl watches the chaos in fear. She panics, thinking that if this keeps up, she'll be captured soon. Just then, a sword is pointed directly at her head. One of the men found her and says with a smile that there she was. With a frightening look, he threatens the girl if she doesn't get up. The young woman is terrified, thinking her end has come and that there's no more hope. The aggressor then raises his sword, ready to deliver the final blow. Suddenly, our protagonist's determined gaze appears in the darkness. The man is thrown far away by an invisible force and shouts in surprise. The young mage appears, shrouded in an aura of power, surprising the girl. She looks at her savior, not believing what's happening. He holds out his hand to her with a kind and protective look. With a confident smile, the young man asks her to stay close and follow him. The girl is speechless, but a glimmer of hope appears in her eyes. Then the mage leads her to a safe place, while shielding her with his body. The leader and the other merchants arrive and say they're ready to fight. With the young woman behind him, the protagonist prepares to face the enemies. He begins to summon a powerful spell, calling upon the darkness. A dark energy starts to spread across the entire battlefield. The mage raises his hand and creates an orb of power with lightning and shadows. The aggressors are trapped in the darkness, unable to see anything. In the darkness, the men shout for torches but end up getting confused and separated. Meanwhile, our protagonist guides the group of merchants to safety. A system window shows that he activated dark vision to see in the dark. Suddenly, one of the assassins finds the group, and the merchants panic. The man raises his sword with a cruel look, ready to attack. Completely terrified, the merchants beg for him to spare their lives. Then, the young mage summons the fire spirit, his eyes glowing. The aggressor is completely engulfed by the flames and cries out in pain. Next, he falls to the ground, completely defeated by the young man's spell. Two other assassins appear and are shocked to see their comrade on the ground. The protagonist thinks this will scare them, but they realize he's a mage. With that, the aggressor's leader orders everyone to attack the young sorcerer. However, the man stops suddenly and looks back with a surprised expression. A giant dragon appears out of nowhere and roars furiously at everyone. The assassin is completely overpowered by the huge creature's fury. His companions are paralyzed with fear, not knowing what to do. The merchants also watch the scene, terrified by the monster's appearance. Even our hero is shocked as he didn't expect that. The beast seems to be injured and glares at everyone with a look full of hatred. The remaining assassins tremble in fear before the creature's presence. Then the dragon attacks the men without mercy, showing all its power. The whole group is terrified, and one of them shouts that it's a real dragon. The mage realizes the situation has become extremely dangerous for everyone. He knows that if they stay there, the dragon will finish them all. At that moment, a system window appears in front of him with a message. The young man is surprised to read that he has acquired the new summoning skill. He looks at the screen and at the dragon, thinking about the art of summoning. With that, the young man realizes that maybe he can communicate with that beast. He remembers his training and wonders if the dragon is a mystery. If that's the case, then he has a chance to resolve the situation. With courage, the young mage tries to communicate with the creature, calling out to it. Behind him, the merchants and the girl watch the scene, completely terrified. The beast then roars furiously at the young man, baring its teeth. But the protagonist stands firm, believing he can resolve the situation. After all, he trusts that communication with the mysteries has never betrayed him before. With that, he thumps his chest and shouts loudly, introducing himself to the monster. He says he's the dragon's friend, leaving all his companions confused. The young man even holds up a sign saying not to fight or bully. The creature just growls and seems not to have understood anything from that bizarre scene. The merchants are speechless, and the leader asks for silence to listen to the mage. The young man realizes his first attempt at communication didn't work. He doesn't understand the beast and decides to use his skill points to help, so he decides to invest all his points in the art of summoning. His skill increases, and he can finally hear the dragon's voice. The young man tries to speak with the creature again, more calmly and politely, but the beast shouts furiously, telling him to just say what he wants to say. Everyone gets scared, and the protagonist realizes the roar was very effective. He then starts to think of a new strategy to calm the monster. Carefully, the mage explains that he has no intention of fighting it. The creature finds it absurd, and he agrees that he would lose the fight in an instant. The merchants wonder if that's telepathy, but no one knows the answer. The girl also watches the scene in silence, not understanding the strange conversation. The dragon says it's too much work to even finish them off right there. The young man gives a relieved smile, thinking his plan is working. However, the mage's expression changes when the creature continues to speak. The beast roars, saying it's in a terrible mood at that very moment. The merchants fall to the ground in despair and beg for the master mage's help. The young man gets tense, not knowing what to do to get out of that situation. The dragon tells him to get lost, and the young man thinks there's no other way. So with determination, he decides he's going to force his way through. The mage asks why the beast is in a bad mood, but it scoffs at him for being human. Even so, the young man insists and says that maybe he can be of some help to the creature. The beast thinks the young man is arrogant and wonders what a mere human could do. Then with a smile, the sorcerer begins to use his powers to impress the dragon. A magical energy spreads quickly through the forest, creating an air of mystery. At this, the merchants and the girl watch everything with expressions of fear and confusion. The giant creature becomes curious about the protagonist's sudden display of power. He releases his mana, showing the monster that he's not just any mage. With a smirk, the dragon finally seems interested in the conversation with the young man. The hero then introduces himself as a humble mage who seeks the world's mysteries. The beast gives a slight smile, seeming to like the boy's audacity. At that moment, the young man realizes the negotiation has finally begun for real. Under the moonlight, the tension between the human and the mystical creature grows ever stronger. The protagonist feels relieved, thinking that for now, the crisis has been averted. But he knows he can't let himself be carried away by the great monster's demands. Suddenly, he remembers an important piece of advice he received from his master. She used to say that one cannot use magic without communicating with the great mysteries. That's why the relationship a mage builds with them is very important, because each mystery has a different personality, like a friend or a subordinate. With a smile, he decides he's going to talk the dragon to get what he wants. Then he summons his skill window to look for a solution to the problem. The screen shows a guide on how to master demon summoning magic. Reading carefully, he finds a key word for his plan: alcohol. The guide says to give them a good drink, and the bigger the beast, the stronger it should be. The young man becomes apprehensive and wonders what the next step of the crazy plan is. The answer is simple and direct: praise them like a madman until you get what you want. Our hero is stunned to discover the solution is so bizarre. He falls to the ground, saying this is impossible for an introvert like him. But he gets up and thinks that first, he needs to capture the beast's heart. With that, the young man offers a special gift he prepared for the creature. The dragon accepts the gift and tells the young sorcerer to bring what he prepared. With that, the mage turns around and calls one of the merchants with a very serious look. He orders the man to bring the strongest drink they have, as quickly as possible. Soon, a box full of bottles and wooden mugs is brought to the spot. The creature looks at the drinks and says that this is a very stingy gift. The young man gets annoyed on the inside, but explains with a smile that in the human world, less is more. Without wasting time, he begins to fill one of the large mugs with the strong drink. After filling the mug, he offers it to the great monster to finally drink. The beast approaches to smell it and makes a disgusted face at the strong odor. With a frightening look, the dragon asks if the mage is plotting something bad. The young man denies it, and to prove it safe, he says he'll drink a little first. Then, without hesitation, the young man tips back the mug and drinks the contents in one go. The merchants watch the scene, completely shocked by the hero's action. He grimaces and says it's fine, but thinks the drink is way too strong. The monster then sniffs the drink again, seeming a little more interested. The young man assures that the creature will be satisfied if it tries at least a little. With that, the beast takes the mug, which looks tiny in its enormous claws. Carefully, the dragon begins to lick the drink to taste the flavor. The men watch the scene nervously, waiting for the giant creature's reaction. Suddenly, the monster drinks it all at once and seems to really like the taste. The young man asks what it thought, but the dragon says it's not that delicious. However, the beast admits that for some reason, the drink is addicting and the plan works. With a smile, the mage offers another mug, saying this one is even better. And so the night continues, with the two of them drinking under the bright, full moon. The creature is now drinking straight from the barrel and asks the name of that liquid. The young man replies that it's alcohol and is relieved to see his plan worked. The mage is surprised because the dragon drank 7 barrels and still hasn't passed out. He realizes the monster is a professional drinker and his plan isn't going to work. He wanted to escape while the beast was sleeping, but now there's no more drink in the wagon. Suddenly, the creature calls the young man and says he had asked a question before. The creature remembers that the young man asked about its bad mood, and he confirms it. The mage is confused by the dragon's sentimentality, who seems to be tipsy. Then the beast starts to vent, saying its nest is cramped and poorly located. It remembers its girlfriend thought the place was cozy, and the young man is shocked. With a tear in its eye, the monster says everything changed without it knowing, because all the other dragons started to make fun of its beloved partner. The creature explains that it felt guilty because they made fun of her because of it. With a cry of pain, it reveals that it was the one who ended the relationship. The beast's shout awakens the merchants who were sleeping nearby. With great sadness, the dragon lets out a roar that echoes throughout the forest. The men are so scared that their souls seem to leave their bodies. Our hero realizes that the monster's feelings are the same as a human's. At this, the young man gets an idea and thinks about how to use this to his advantage. He then calls for the creature's attention, which looks at him with a confused expression. The mage stands up and promises that he will fix the dragon's nest with magic. The beast is surprised and asks if he would really do that for a monster. The protagonist confirms, but says he'll want something in return for the favor. With a smile, he asks that the dragon grant him just a single request. The next day, the sun rises, and a new chapter of their journey begins. Our hero walks through the forest, while the others are still waking up. The merchant leader wakes up groggy and says he missed someone. With a cute face, he pouts, but the young man just pokes him on the forehead. The protagonist is clearly annoyed by the merchant's bizarre scene. He threatens the man, telling him to stop the nonsense or he'll get hurt. With an angry face, the mage glares at the merchant, who is terrified by the threat. The man screams in fear and falls backward, completely scared of the young man. In doing so, he ends up knocking over the other merchants and the girl like dominoes. Everyone is dizzy and confused by the sudden fall and rubs their heads. The sorcerer explains that everyone passed out from the dragon's roar the night before. The girl asks if the beast has already left, but he says it's waiting up there. The merchants panic, thinking the dragon will devour them, but the mage says no. With a serious look, he explains that he made a deal for the creature to let them go. The girl is surprised by the news and asks what kind of deal he made. At this, the men think the young man sacrificed himself for them, and he gets embarrassed. In a flashback, he remembers the promise to fix the beast's nest to save them. With that, the leader shouts the young sorcerer's full name like a great hero. The protagonist is completely confused by the merchant's exaggerated reaction. Suddenly, they start singing a song about how he defeated the dragon. The song says the mage scolded the beast and made it afraid of him. They sing with joy that the young man made the great creature surrender to him. With tears in their eyes, the men celebrate their savior's heroic deed. Then they promise to protect the young man with their lives. And he doesn't understand a thing. The mage tells them to get ready to leave, but not to leave him behind. The leader agrees, saying that they are one body and one mind now. The girl suggests checking the number of mercenaries, and the men get annoyed. With a determined look, the young woman faces the group and seems to have a plan. Then she walks away and heads alone into the dense forest. Meanwhile, the dragon shows our hero its nest inside a cave. The young man is shocked by the place's appearance, and the beast notices his reaction. The monster gets irritated and says it's too late to back out, but the young man denies it all. The sorcerer is exhausted, and his stamina is low from using the dragon tongue. He just wants to get it over with so he can rest and plans to widen the nest's walls. With his eyes closed, the protagonist concentrates to summon an ancient power. He then begins to chant a powerful spell, calling for the spirit of the earth. A golden figure appears and asks what the human wants with it again. The spirit says it's busy, and the mage asks for a favor, but it seems irritated. The young man realizes he's being a huge bother to the earth entity. He comes back and tells the dragon the spirit refused to speak with him right now. The young man thinks that if he tries again, the entity will get even angrier. The creature says that if the earth rejected him, then there's nothing that can be done. The protagonist is surprised by the answer, but doesn't seem willing to give up. The creature gives up, saying she wasn't its destined partner after all. But the mage looks at the beast with a gaze full of compassion and determination. The dragon then asks for the sorcerer's name, and he answers without hesitation. With a smile, the creature introduces itself as Drake Longtail and invites him to be its friend. The young man accepts the handshake, sealing the friendship between human and dragon. At this, a system window appears and shows that he has acquired the ability to summon his new friend. He feels bad because he gained a skill, but can't do anything for his friend. The great beast calls the young man's name with a friendly and slightly mysterious voice. To celebrate their friendship, the creature offers a gift from its mountain of treasures. The mage remembers his master said that dragons love to collect jewels. With a jewel in hand, he thinks that the earth would listen to him if it saw that treasure. Suddenly, a brilliant idea comes to his mind, and he looks at the stone attentively. He asks his new friend if he can scribble a little on the cave floor. The beast is confused and doesn't understand what the young sorcerer is planning to do. Then the young man draws a magic circle on the ground and places the jewel right in the center. He remembers another teaching from his master about how to deal with mysteries. The creature asks what he's trying to do, but the mage tells it to just watch. With a confident smile, he calls for the spirit of the earth once more with energy. The entity appears, and the young man asks it to move the rocks and smooth the nest's walls. At that moment, the jewel in the magic circle begins to glow intensely with power. The gift is sent through the circle in a beam of blue light and pure energy. With that, the cave walls begin to move and reshape themselves with force. A bright light illuminates the entrance, and the nest space begins to expand. The dragon covers its eyes to protect itself from the intense light of the transformation. Its eye reflects the new landscape of the nest, now completely renovated and beautiful. The nest has become a magnificent place, and the mage says that this is a gift. The beast is so moved that the young man thinks it's going to cry with happiness. The place is now incredibly spacious and full of impressive decorations. The creature takes a deep breath and says the smell of its new home is simply wonderful. The creature asks if the good smell is also magic, but the young man says no. With that, the dragon thanks its friend with a little punch that sends him flying. It says that now it can start a family, and the sorcerer gets embarrassed. The young man feels dizzy from the hug, but is happy that his new friend liked it. Suddenly, the protagonist starts to feel sick and stumbles backward. With a hand on his head, he doesn't understand what's happening to his body. Then, with an expression of horror, he covers his mouth, not believing it. The beast gets worried when it sees its friend is bleeding for no reason. Blood runs down the young mage's face as he loses consciousness. He collapses on the ground, and the creature shouts his name, completely desperate. The monster catches the young man in its claws and tells him to hang in there. The protagonist is unconscious, and his friend doesn't know how to help him. Desperate, the great beast shouts for the sorcerer, not knowing what to do. At that moment, the girl from the merchant group comes running into the cave. The dragon is shocked to see the young woman suddenly appear in its new home. The young woman is also paralyzed with fear upon seeing the scary scene there. She sees the creature holding the unconscious mage and goes into a total panic. The hero rests in his friend's giant hand, who looks very worried. With a furious look, the monster glares at the girl, growling with its teeth. The young woman tries to calm the beast, but is trembling with fear and can't speak. She shouts that she's Ein's friend and begs the creature not to devour her. With a nervous smile, the girl makes an okay sign to show friendship. The dragon seems to process the young woman's words and calms down a bit. It looks at the young woman more calmly, but still with a very serious gaze. Meanwhile, our hero remains unconscious and seems to be exhausted. Time passes and night falls, bringing a silence to the monster's cave. In a candlelit room, someone rests peacefully in bed. Our protagonist finally wakes up, but still seems very sleepy. He wonders what time it is and reaches for his phone out of pure habit, but he realizes his hand is being held by someone else. The young man wakes up and wonders why his phone feels so soft and fluffy. He squeezes the hand and thinks the sensation feels like a soft cat's paw. Suddenly, a female voice asks if he's finally awake, and he gets startled. The protagonist sits up, startled, and sees the girl from the group by his side. Confused, he calls her Kathy and asks what she's doing there with him. He still thinks he's dreaming, and the young woman asks him to lie back down. She gets worried and says he shouldn't get up so suddenly like that. With a hand on his head, the young man finally remembers that he had passed out earlier. He remembers that forcing his summoning magic caused the nosebleed. With that, the mage wonders if the girl saw that whole embarrassing scene. Ashamed, he covers his face, thinking that it was a huge embarrassment. Then he asks where the beast is, but she says it left suddenly. The young man imagines his friend went to see his girlfriend with his new luxury nest. He apologizes for the trouble, and she says it's okay, not to worry. The protagonist asks how she got in, and she says she told it she was his friend. The young woman is confused by the Ra's tongue, and the young man doesn't understand either. He wonders if she used an automatic translator, but is still sleepy. The girl reveals that she followed him even though she knew it was very dangerous to go there. She then says she has something important to ask, and the young man listens attentively. The young woman seems nervous, and the protagonist just watches her in silence. She reveals that what happened to her group was all because of him. With a sad look, the young woman apologizes for all the trouble she caused. The sorcerer notices the mood suddenly became heavy and gets suspicious. He remembers she was trembling with fear before and becomes more curious. The girl gets embarrassed and tries to play it off, but the young man keeps staring at her. He jokes if she's a bandit and if she's planning to take everything he has. With a smile, the young man says that a beautiful bandit is a fantasy classic. The young woman then reveals she has a secret and that her name isn't really Kathy. She transforms into a princess, and the mage thinks it's just a silly joke. She reveals that her name is Lucy of the Talion family, and that she is a real noble. She explains that the bandits came to kidnap her on her fiancé's orders. The mage thinks it's a couple's quarrel, but she says the situation is more serious. Lucy reveals she was planning to go far away, so her fiancé couldn't find her. But after what happened yesterday, she lost the confidence to run away alone. With that, the young woman holds the young man's hands with a look full of hope. She asks the mage to help her in her escape, but he is confused by the request. He asks why she's running away and if her fiancé did something bad to her. Lucy explains that her family rules the Fianruf region, but had problems. Due to a lack of knights, the family was always exposed to enemy attacks. At this rate, a territorial war would begin and the Talion family would be destroyed. And so, in an arranged marriage, her family promised her to a former mercenary captain. He was the captain of the most influential mercenary group of the time, and very powerful. With that, external forces stopped trying to get their hands on the Talion house. At first, the man seemed satisfied with the status of son-in-law to the baronial family. He and Lucy attended parties and seemed like a happy and loving couple. But at some point, he began to use his status to exert power and control. He started going out with other women and looking down on her in public and private. Her parents couldn't take it anymore and demanded the annulment of the engagement immediately. However, the man had other plans and a much darker nature. With a cry of pain, Lucy reveals that he poisoned her parents to stop them. The protagonist is shocked by the revelation and doesn't know what to say to the young woman. She explains that he did it so he wouldn't lose the power he gained with the engagement. Our hero is impressed by the story and the cruelty of Lucy's fiancé. He looks at a portrait of the man and calls him a huge scoundrel and an opportunist. The young woman says that if he doesn't marry her, he can't inherit the family's assets. That's why she ran away with the help of a servant, because she refuses to marry him. She is sure that he will continue to pursue her because of the arranged marriage. With a desperate look, Lucy begs for the mage's help to escape safely. She knows she won't be able to escape alone and that she needs a strong ally. The protagonist listens to everything in silence and thinks about the difficult decision he has. The young man understands it's a complicated situation and that she can't run away alone. He thinks about how she's about to be consumed by her fiancé's wickedness. With that, the young man can't understand the minds of these people who seek power. Crying, the young woman begs for his help and promises a great reward. The mage then asks why she trusts him, and if he were to betray her for money, but she says the man is stingy and would only give a few silver coins. With a determined look, the young woman says that in return, she can give him everything. The protagonist is surprised and asks if she's serious about everything. At this, the young noble even offers the Italian family house as a reward. The two stare at each other in silence as the proposal hangs in the air between them. The young man then realizes that with this proposal, he could marry her. For a farmer's son, this would be a golden opportunity to move up in life. But his main goal is to perfect his magic, not to get involved with the nobility. He decides that for now, he will just shake off the pursuers and continue his journey. Honestly speaking, he doesn't feel prepared for such a dangerous mission. So the young man says she should find someone more skilled with a blade. With tears in her eyes, the girl seems to have lost all her hope. But the mage stands up and says that since she's offering a payment, he can at least help her escape safely from her enemies. However, after that, he warns that she will be on her own on her journey. The young woman starts to cry, and the young man doesn't understand the reason for her tears. He asks if he said something wrong and tries to calm her with a gentle gesture. She holds his hand and thanks him for agreeing to help with her escape. With many tears on her face, Lucy thanks him immensely for all his help. Then, in an impulsive emotion, the young noble hugs the mage tightly. The protagonist is a bit embarrassed, but returns the hug to comfort her. The two remain in an embrace for a moment in silence in the illuminated cave. The next day, a bright sun shines in the sky, and the mood seems more cheerful. Outside, the dragon is relaxing in a makeshift beach chair. It even puts on sunglasses to enjoy the day in style. The mage and Lucy leave the cave and find the creature waiting for them outside. The beast asks how the young man is, and he replies that he's fine and even more tanned. The hero then announces that they need to go down the mountain because everyone is waiting. The noble thanks it for the gift, and the creature invites the two to climb on its back. With that, the monster lies down on the grass so they can climb on and be carried. Already mounted, the young man thanks his friend, while the young woman seems afraid to climb up. The creature then shouts, calling the young woman Han's girl, leaving her confused. With an intimidating look, the dragon insists that she get on its back too. The sorcerer tries to explain that they aren't a couple, but the beast doesn't seem to understand. Lucy is very lost in the conversation and wonders what they're talking about. Embarrassed by the situation, the protagonist extends his hand to help the girl. With a smile, he invites her to climb on its back so they can go on the journey together. He holds the noble's hand firmly to help her mount the great creature. With both of them on the dragon's back, the young man says they can now leave for their destination. The beast starts to run through the forest, preparing to fly through the skies soon after. With a great leap, the dragon takes flight, and the mage shouts for them to go to the location quickly. Meanwhile, in the forest, some merchants are talking about the bandits' attack. One of the men is terrified at the idea of the robbers still being nearby. Another merchant wonders if the bandits would wander aimlessly through the forest. They argue, saying that bandits have no brains and will surely come after them. With that, they ask for the group leader's opinion to know what they should do. The guild master seems to think for a moment before making his final decision. Suddenly, he opens his eyes with a serious and determined expression. The leader then decides they will wait for the return of the missing young mage. His companions react with surprise and joy to the guild chief's decision. They trust in the sorcerer's strength and believe he is fine and just delayed. But 10 minutes later, they are captured and regret not having fled. The bandit leader slaps one of them and tells them to stop whining. He threatens the trio with his sword, and they beg not to be hurt by the man. With a smile, the bandit says he will spare their lives if they hand over the girl. The bandit leader says he heard about a beautiful young woman with bluish hair in the group. At this, the merchants are terrified and repeat the description of the girl he's looking for. They then remember Kathy and are shocked by the evil bandit's revelation. The chief asks where the young woman is and tells his men to find her right now. But they search everywhere and realize the girl is no longer with them there. The bandit smiles maliciously and understands that the young woman managed to escape somehow. Desperate, the merchants beg for their lives and shout the sorcerer's name. Suddenly, one of the men announces that the mage is returning, riding a large drake. With this news, the merchants cry with relief and think they have been saved by the hero. The bandit leader is confused and wonders what a mage with a drake is, after all. Then he looks into the forest and sees the creature running towards them at high speed. On top of the beast are the protagonist and the young noble, ready for the great battle. The chief points to the girl and recognizes her, while his henchman trembles in fear. Another man panics upon seeing the creature the young woman is now riding. With its eyes glowing red, the beast glares at the bandits with a deadly look. The bandit chief starts to sweat and is paralyzed with fear by the whole scene. Without a second thought, the leader shouts for his men to flee as quickly as possible. With the enemies gone, the guild master approaches and says he's happy she's okay. He then scolds her, saying it's a good thing the mage was with her to protect her. They wonder how the bandits knew about the girl and the Church of Tenjin. Our hero overhears the conversation and is intrigued by the name of this Tenjin church. He thinks he hasn't heard that name in a long time and becomes thoughtful about the whole matter. The Church of Tenjin is the dominant religion in the world and prohibits slavery among them. The protagonist thinks that even after everything, they won't give up on Lucy easily. He realizes that they are really desperate to marry the young noble. With that, the young man imagines the bandits will now continue to pursue them relentlessly. So he turns to his friend and asks him to do a small favor. The mage asks the creature to get rid of those guys and, if necessary, to finish them off. With a smile, the beast says it will be a pleasure to help its great friend on this mission. The young man then watches his companion run into the forest to take care of the bandits. The young man thinks that to survive in this fantasy world, he needs to be tougher. Suddenly, the mage feels a sharp pain in his head and is a bit dazed by it. He wonders if he overdid it again by using the dragon tongue to communicate. Lucy approaches with concern, but the young man says he's fine and not to worry. The young woman insists that he doesn't look well at all, while the guild chief observes them. The group leader seems to get an idea upon seeing the closeness of the two young people. With a smile, he asks if the two are dating, making them embarrassed by the question. The group then continues their journey, and the protagonist relaxes peacefully in the wagon. Suddenly, his eyes open, and he seems to receive some kind of mental notification. A system screen informs him that his dragon has eliminated 11 humans in the forest. He thinks it's a shame he can't summon the creature directly in front of him at that moment. Our hero then concentrates to try to communicate with his friend who is far away. The dragon confirms that it took care of all the enemies it found in its path. With a smile, the young man thanks him and says he was a great help to all of them. The creature replies that it would do anything to make its great friend happy and content. The mage then says goodbye as he needs to continue his journey far from the mountains. It turns out his friend cannot leave the mountain range and needs to stay there. The young man is sad that he can't say goodbye in person one last time. With that, they say their goodbyes and thank each other for all the help and friendship they shared. But before leaving, the monster comes closer to tell him one last important thing. A glowing blue feather appears, and the creature asks if he is interested in the phoenix. After that, they arrive in a town called Riverville, near a large river. The protagonist is pensive about the phoenix, as he watches the city's hustle and bustle. His friend told him there is a rumor about an ice phoenix in the northern mountains. The phoenix is known as the bird that never perishes, and is always reborn from its own ashes. Although the fire phoenix is the most famous, there are other variations of the creature. There are ice, wind, and even rock phoenixes scattered throughout the world. They change form depending on where they live, and are very adaptable monsters. The young man then wonders if he could make one of them his new summon. Suddenly, the guild members run towards him, shouting for the master mage. The guild leader invites the mage to see the lord of the manor with them, but the young man thinks that to keep Lucy safe, it's better to avoid the local nobility. One of the merchants then calls the young woman to go with them, but she doesn't know what to say. The young woman looks at the protagonist, hoping he will help her out of this situation. With that, the hero puts his arm around her and says they are going to the inn to rest before leaving. His companions are shocked and wonder if the two are going to rest there together. The noble seems a bit flushed by the proximity, but doesn't say a word about it. The sorcerer complains that he's exhausted, while the girl gives him a mischievous smile. The guild master watches them from afar and confirms his suspicions about the couple. With a smile on his face, the chief celebrates that the two young people are really together. Meanwhile, a man in elegant clothes walks past them on the city street. The young woman asks why he's pretending to be with her, and the mage says it's to ward off idiots. He then explains why he is so polite to commoners despite being a powerful mage. The young man reveals that he is also a commoner and the son of a simple farmer from the countryside, but he just follows the example of his master, who was a very kind and respectful man. Lucy listens to everything in silence and seems to admire the young man's life story. The protagonist then asks what her plan is, and she says she's going to see Count Katana. She explains that the Count is her uncle and will help her escape from her evil fiancé. With a sly smile, the young woman says her mother and the uncle got along well enough. The mage thinks this answer might mean the situation is more complicated. He asks if she has anyone else she trusts, and the noble gets defensive. The young man says that if she's sure, then her uncle must be a good man for her. Lucy says that either way, it's better than a stranger, as everyone wants to marry her. With a smile, she says she wouldn't refuse a proposal from a mage of his caliber. The sorcerer reminds her that their contract ends as soon as they reach their final destination. He then says she's not the only girl in the world and shouldn't think so highly of herself. With a furious look, the young noble gets very irritated by the mage's comment. She calls him an idiot and runs in the opposite direction, saying the inn is that way. They then arrive at the door of an inn, with a small bell to announce their arrival. The couple enters the establishment and is greeted with a warm welcome from the place. The young man asks for a room for a few nights and says they need a bath. He throws a bag of coins on the counter and asks if the money is enough. The innkeeper smiles and says it's more than enough and that she'll prepare the rooms. Then the woman points to the noble and asks if she will also take a bath. The young woman panics and refuses the offer, saying she's fine. The sorcerer asks why and if she thinks the water in that place is dirty. With a red face, she asks if she really needs to explain the reason to him. The protagonist doesn't understand anything and just watches her with a confused look. It turns out that the medieval baths at that inn had no privacy. With that, the young man finally understands the situation and is shocked by the discovery. He then changes his mind and tells the woman to prepare the bath just for him. Lucy sighs in relief at the mage's decision and seems more at ease now, but in the tavern, some men are staring greedily at the young noble's beauty. The hero notices the stares and becomes a little uncomfortable with all the attention. He asks Lucy to put on her hood, and she reminds him that her name is Kathy now. The young man pulls her hood up and tells her to hurry because everyone is looking. With a quick gesture, he adjusts her hood and calls her very annoying. At the next table, the men continue to watch them with malicious smiles. Later, outside the inn, one of the guys asks if they saw that woman. They call her an angel and say they've never seen beauty like hers before. Another points out that she's just with a skinny, cute boy. With that, the group of men plans to take the young woman to have some fun with her. They realize the couple won't be staying for long and need to act fast. With a wicked smile, they decide they're going to get the young woman tonight. Meanwhile, in a large castle, the guild chief talks with the local baron. The noble tells him to do his best and try not to cause any trouble there. The merchant leader gives his thanks and bows as a sign of great respect to the baron. He thinks that if he can win the noble's favor, he might be able to spend time at the castle. With a brilliant idea, he decides he's going to tell the baron about the master mage. The man bows again and says he has something to tell, and the noble becomes interested. The guild leader says it's a secret, but out of respect for the baron, he will tell him. With a smile, the noble praises the man's attitude and asks him to continue. Then the merchant reveals that during his travels, he met a powerful mage. He acts out how the sorcerer saved them from bandits with his great powers. With an air of mystery, the chief says that's not even the beginning of the story. He then reveals that the great mage is staying at an inn in the city. The noble is shocked by the news and asks if this is really true. He worries about a whimsical mage causing trouble in his territory. The baron imagines the young sorcerer's fury and the chaos he could cause. At this, he visualizes the mage's dragon destroying the city with its deadly fire. The noble thinks the situation could be even worse for a specific reason. He remembers that a group of fanatics is already in his domain at the moment. The Knights of Santiago are monks and artists who hunt demons and monsters. They proclaim themselves the great protectors of all humanity against evil. With that, the baron fears what would happen if these knights acted on their own. And what if the young mage with his powerful dragon happened to meet them? The encounter between the two sides could lead to an epic and destructive battle. The entire city could be destroyed in the blink of an eye with this fight. Terrified by the possibility, the noble begins to sweat and tremble with fear. In a cry of desperation, he calls for his commander for an urgent order. The commander presents himself and asks what His Excellency desires at that moment. With that, the noble orders a room to be given to the merchant, who is very happy with the order. He then orders the Knights of Santiago to be summoned immediately. The baron wants to bring them close before any trouble can happen there. Meanwhile, at the inn, the traveling couple enjoys a hot meal. The owner of the place apologizes to the mage because the bath is not ready yet. The woman sighs and says she hasn't even prepared the water for the bath yet. The young man then says he will prepare everything himself and that she doesn't need to worry. He tells the young woman to go upstairs as soon as she finishes eating, and she agrees. With that, the young noble continues to eat her soup peacefully at the tavern table. One of the men watches the girl with a malicious smile on his face. After the meal, the young woman goes up the stairs to the room as agreed. She walks down a dark hallway towards her dormitory in the inn. Suddenly, the same man from before grabs her by the arm in the middle of the hallway. He asks if she is the companion of the black-haired young man who left. The young woman asks who he is and demands that he let her go immediately. The guy says he's an errand boy hired by her mage friend. He shows a gold coin and says he was sent to find her. The man explains that there was an incident while the young man was going to the bath. With that, she imagines that her fiancé's men have finally found them. He insists there's no time to lose and that she needs to go with him now. The noble then runs down the stairs after the strange messenger. They leave the inn and follow a dark, deserted path in the city. The young woman follows the man through the streets, but begins to suspect the situation. She realizes that something is wrong and becomes very confused by the path. Then the young woman sees her friend preparing the bath without any problem. At that moment, the man grabs her from behind to try to take her by force. The girl screams in terror upon realizing she has fallen into a dirty trap. The protagonist hears the scream and turns around, startled, calling out for her. He recognizes the young woman's voice and wonders what's happening there. But suddenly, one of the henchmen tries to attack him from behind with a club. With a quick movement, the mage dodges the blow without any difficulty. The aggressor ends up falling to the ground and is knocked out by his own blow. Our hero realizes They are not the henchmen of the young woman's fiancé. He then sees the other men carrying the girl away in a sack. With a furious look, the young sorcerer prepares for the chase. He says he won't let them get away and hits the henchman who attacked him. The young man complains that he lost the others because of this guy in the way. Suddenly, a blue light envelopes the body of the man on the ground. The henchman is terrified by the magic and doesn't understand what's happening. The mage thinks that with his current strength, he can't show off as he'd like. A mysterious voice calls him and says, it's the perfect time for them to play. The hero recognizes that voice and realizes it's the darkness speaking to him. With a shout, he summons the power of darkness, and the place is covered in shadows. The henchman is terrified by the magic and doesn't understand what's happening. Suddenly, everything goes dark, and the bandit can't see anything anymore. With red eyes, the young man says that only he can see in the shadow magic. After a beating, the man begs for his life while his friends run away. Our hero wonders if the guy called for some kind of backup to come there. With his foot on the man's chest, he prepares to question him about the girl. The protagonist asks where they took the kidnapped young noble. Suddenly, the magic dissipates, and the bandit celebrates that he can see again. With a blow to the head, the mage demands an answer, and the man screams in pain. He then draws his sword and prepares to use force to get him to talk. But a voice interrupts him and tells him to stop all this commotion now. The sorcerer looks to the side and thinks about the darkness he'd just summoned. A group of men approaches and asks if he summoned that darkness. They are the Knights of Santiago, and they have arrived to investigate the whole situation. The protagonist takes responsibility and says he was the one who summoned the darkness. The leader of the knights and his men stare at the boy with a serious and intimidating look. Our hero feels an incredible killing intent coming from the old man and wonders who he is. With that, the bandit crawls on the ground and begs the newcomers for help. He then accuses the mage of trying to take him out for no apparent reason. The young man gets angry and grabs the man, who screams in terror as his eyes glow. With a smirk, the leader of the knights simply says he understands the situation. He then says that if the boy is a sorcerer, then something like that is quite possible. Meanwhile, the bathwater our hero was preparing starts to boil in the cauldron. The protagonist is confused by the comment and asks what he means by possible. The old man then asks if that's not how mages naturally are in his world. To him, sorcerers are beings who do whatever they want without thinking about the consequences. Our hero is completely shocked and annoyed by that absurd generalization. He can't believe what he just heard and wonders what that man thinks a mage is. Angrily, the boy clenches his fists and tells the old man to stop with that nonsense. The young man shouts that the bandit attacked him first and that no one is judging things fairly. The situation becomes tense, and an awkward silence hangs in the air between the two groups. Our hero realizes he yelled and becomes afraid the old man will draw his sword and attack him. But to his surprise, the leader of the knights starts laughing boisterously. He says that from the way the boy talks, he seems to be a very skilled and trained mage. Another knight approaches and says that even so, there was no reason to use evil magic. The protagonist is speechless and repeats the words, evil magic, not understanding at all. The man explains that using darkness to blind is an act against the sun, which is the eye of the heavens. With his arms crossed, he states that hiding in the shadows is an act of cowardice. The young man processes the words and thinks that to them, darkness is cowardly for rejecting the sun. He then realizes from their expressions that there must be followers of some religion. With that, our hero clears his throat and prepares to give a fitting response. The mage asks if it isn't the law of the heavens that day and night should coexist. He shouts that the absence of the sun creates darkness and asks what's wrong with that. The knight is left completely speechless and doesn't know how to respond to that logic. The other knights are shocked and start whispering among themselves after the mage's speech. Their leader realizes he judged the young man completely wrong and too hastily. Then, the men's mood changes, and they say they misunderstood and that it's all divine will. Our hero is taken aback by the sudden change and thinks that these people are pretty weird. He then takes the opportunity to say he needs to go because his sister has been kidnapped. At that, the old man asks if the attack was because the bandit was an accomplice of the kidnappers. The bandit becomes desperate and denies everything, while the knights stare at him menacingly. The leader then orders one of his men, named Dixtry, to keep an eye on the suspect. He then turns to the protagonist and apologizes for taking up his valuable time. As an apology, the white-haired man offers his help to the boy. The scene cuts to a pier where a boat with the kidnappers is departing at sunset. With the knight's help, our hero runs desperately toward the indicated location. One of the warriors points to the boat and shouts that's the place the witnesses mentioned. The men are furious when they realize the bandits' plan to escape by the river. But our hero thinks it's dangerous to travel by boat now that the sun has set. The young man turns around, startled, as the leader of the knights shouts to get everyone's attention. The old man places a hand on his shoulder and looks at him with a serious and determined expression. He gives a motivational speech about saving a soul and orders them to prepare the boats. His men get fired up and shout that the Knights of Santiago will go with him on this mission. The mage finally understands they are in order and thinks their motto is pretty cool. The boy tries to warn him that it's dangerous, but the old man is eager to board right away. He continues speaking formally, and the old man laughs, saying he doesn't need to be like that. Once on the boat, one of the men says he found a hook and is going to pull the other vessel. The leader of the knights is shocked by the idea and asks if he intends to pull the boat. The old man then asks how the mage uses water magic, and the young man says he studied at several schools. He comments that all the sorcerers he's seen in battle only used one type of magic. Besides, he thinks someone at the introductory level shouldn't even be able to use magic. Ignoring the man, our hero concentrates his mana and prepares to cast a water spell. A large wave of blue energy emanates from the boy, leaving the knights impressed. With his power, he creates a gigantic wave that rushes quickly toward the enemies. The leader of the knights' jaw drops, and he says that magic surpasses what he saw in the war. On the other boat, the kidnappers panic and wonder what is happening. One of the bandits looks back and doesn't understand the strange situation that has formed. Just then, the giant wave hits the vessel, throwing the criminals everywhere. With the force of the water, their boat capsizes, and they all fall into the icy river at once. Back on dry land, our hero watches the knights bring in the captured prisoners. Suddenly, his sister runs toward him and jumps into his arms, crying with relief. The old man approaches and asks why the boy is making the girl cry like that. With a gentle look, the young man hugs the girl and says she went through a lot. He then comforts her in his arms as she continues to cry out of relief and fear. With a tired sigh, the boy thinks that his energy is completely drained. He just wants to go back to the inn and take a bath, but he had no idea what awaited him. A peaceful bath in that world was something that wouldn't be allowed so easily. Two men on horseback arrive in the city and are identified as Bernard and Hansen. The Lord's son and his knight ride hastily through the streets, clearing the way. Hansen sees smoke in the distance and is sure it's a sign of a battle. He gets worried and thinks that his lord's concerns have become a reality. Bernard, on the other hand, seems annoyed and complains that traveling with a knave master is a headache. The knight looks desperate because of the young noble's comment. Meanwhile, our mage is finally going to take his bath, and a knight offers to help. The young man refuses the help and seems a little uncomfortable with the whole situation. At that moment, the inn's door bursts open with a loud and sudden noise. Bernard and Hansen appear and shout, asking what the heck is happening there. Our hero is confused in the middle of his bath by the sudden arrival of the two young men. The newcomers are completely shocked to see the boy taking a bath. Bernard thinks that the Empire's citizens only bathe on very special occasions. He notices the mess around and concludes that something serious must have happened. The noble demands a detailed report from our hero about all the commotion, but the leader of the knights steps forward and offers to explain everything to the young lord. Bernard gets angry and asks why he is getting involved, and the old man reveals the boy is a mage. The leader of the knights immediately realizes the young noble's intention and his plan. The boy then introduces himself arrogantly, claiming to be the heir of House Cults. With a smug smile, he orders our hero to get out of the bath and greet him. It's then that we get an explanation of how nobles usually provoke mages. Apparently, this is a way to test a sorcerer's power in that world. If the mage doesn't react, he's seen as weak. But if he gets angry, then he's considered strong. Our hero then remembers what Lucy had told him and understands the situation. With his arms crossed and a serious look, the young mage simply refuses to obey. The noble is completely shocked and can't believe what he just heard. Furious, the boy shouts and asks if the mage really refused to obey. The protagonist then challenges him, asking why he should do as he says. The young lord loses his patience and orders his knight to remove the mage by force. Our hero sees through the act and even compliments the spoiled boy's performance. He then decides that if this is how things are, he'll play along. A bluish aura starts to emanate from the boy, who repeats the word fraud angrily. The two are completely terrified by that sudden display of power. The sorcerer then raises his hand and uses his magic to lift the things around them. With his power, all the wooden objects nearby begin to float in the air. Hansen becomes desperate and asks the mage to stop, as he now understands his power and apologizes. With that, the magic dissipates, and all the objects fall to the floor at once. With a satisfied smile, our hero stretches and thinks that was enough. The noble falls to the ground, completely dizzy and terrified by what just happened. But the boy soon realizes that he might have overdone it a bit with his demonstration. He then starts to worry if he'll have to explain himself to Baron Kultz, the boy's father. The next day, the protagonist is invited to the Baron's mansion for a talk. There, the man apologizes for his son, and our hero says he also went too far. The Lord asks about the mage's companion, and he replies that she stayed at the inn. It turns out the leader of the knights assured him they would protect her well in his absence. With the luxurious environment around him, the boy just says he understands the situation. To end the conversation, the Baron asks for his master's name, and he reveals it to be Eritas. The Baron says he knows Eritas and asks if she went south because of an academy. With a strange look, the noble asks why she didn't go to the duchies of Pakar or Roxran. Our hero doesn't understand the question, and the Lord explains that things have been quite tense lately. He reveals that the Duchy of Pakar seems to be keeping an eye on and planning something against Roxran. Our hero gets worried and wonders if this could turn into a major war. The Baron then looks at the boy and asks if he is also heading south. The mage denies it and says that his destination is actually the east in search of some mysteries. The noble then understands the situation and decides to give the young sorcerer a gift. The boy is surprised and repeats the word gift, not understanding the reason for it. With that, a large and beautiful chest is placed in front of him, and he asks what's inside. With a smile on his face, the Lord just encourages the young man to open the chest and see for himself. Though a little hesitant, our hero approaches and places his hands on the chest to open it. Upon seeing what's inside the chest, the boy's eyes widen in pure surprise and astonishment. Inside, he finds a staff that belonged to a great archmage of the past. The Baron explains that the name of that magic staff is known as Wind's Step. The boy then takes the staff in his hands and feels the power emanating from the object. The noble watches him and says the staff perfectly matches the young mage's appearance. To our hero, it just looks like a common cosplay item from some game character, but he admits with a slight smile that it's still very nice to receive a gift. The man says it's a token of gratitude, and the boy thanks him, saying he really liked the item. With the gift in hand, the young man says he will gratefully accept the staff. Back at the inn, the boy is surprised by his sister, who shouts his name. He turns around, startled, and asks the girl what happened that was so serious she had to shout. With a desperate look on her face, the girl just replies that the situation is very serious. She then grabs her brother's arm and pulls him into the room hurriedly. The young woman then shows him a crow trapped in a cage and says they really need him. The protagonist doesn't understand anything and just asks if that's really a crow. The leader of the knights explains that a hunter caught it, but the girl stopped him from eating it. The girl says his name is Raven, the creature is a crow, and that this is the work of fate. A sweat drop appears on the boy's head as his sister keeps talking about their connection with sparkling eyes. The girl asks with great excitement if it isn't the work of fate. The mage then apologizes for the trouble and tells the hunter to just eat the bird. He then turns to his sister and asks what kind of nonsense she's talking about since he's the mage there. The hunter thanks the boy and says that they can then eat the crow for lunch without any problem. But suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes in the young man's head, pleading for his help. With that, our hero shouts for the man to wait, leaving him completely confused by the reaction. The sorcerer holds the bird and asks what it is, while the creature begs for help. He insists on the question and demands an answer as the bird continues to cry for help desperately. The boy realizes his ability isn't working and wonders if it's due to a lack of mystery. The voice continues to plead in his mind, and he tells the creature to be quiet so he can save it. A vein of anger pops on the mage's forehead as he is already losing his patience with the situation. He then yells that he'll save the crow, but for that to happen, the creature needs to be quiet. After the shout, the bird finally goes quiet and stares at the young man with its red eyes. Our hero thinks that even if the creature doesn't understand words, it can read the room. The hunter is astonished and asks if he talked to the bird, and the mage confirms it. The boy's sister is overjoyed and says she knew that crow wasn't a normal animal. The knight says she's a lot like her brother, and the young woman boasts about her talent for magic. We then see our protagonist carefully bandaging the small bird's injured wing. He finishes the bandage and says that the crow's wing will heal properly this way. The two siblings and the bird sit in silence at the table, observing the result of the bandage. The mage thinks he can't let the bird go, because the hunters might catch it and eat it. The crow seems to understand the boy's thought and hops onto his hand with a clever look. With shining eyes, the bird pleads not to be abandoned, because those people are scary. Our hero is exasperated and thinks this whole situation is a huge headache. Without even asking for permission, the crow simply flies up and lands on its new savior's shoulder. The girl asks if they're going to take the bird, and her brother confirms they will until it's healed. With a smile on her face, the young woman says they need to give their new friend a name. She suggests the name Obsidian, and the mage notices the crow is enjoying being pampered. The boy thinks the name is too long and suggests Oberon, and from that moment on, that's the creature's name. Oberon then puffs out his chest and squawks to offer tribute, and the young man wonders if he's happy. The mage's sister then has an idea and suggests they travel together with the Order of Knights. She explains it would be much better and safer than just the two of them traveling alone. The boy considers the proposal and imagines that with the knights around, no bandits would dare to attack. But he soon remembers that the problem would be if they weren't heading in the same direction. Suddenly, the leader of the knights appears and asks what they are agonizing over. The old man sits with them and says it's very dangerous for a mage to travel alone with a woman. With a smile on his face, he then proposes they make a deal that would be advantageous for both sides. He explains that his order was on its way to capture a monster that appeared in Katina County. Our hero is surprised and repeats the word, monster, as the bird on his shoulder watches him. The man asks if by any chance he has ever heard of a creature called a manticore. With that, he invites the young man to join them in the hunt for that dangerous creature. We are then introduced to the manticore, a terrible beast greatly feared by everyone in the region. This creature is known for being a cruel monster that takes great pleasure in ending lives. The mage is in shock and asks if the old man is serious about hunting the manticore together. The leader of the knights says no, explaining he doesn't want to drag him into any unnecessary danger. But he admits that if the boy offered to help, he certainly wouldn't refuse. The protagonist remains silent for a moment, thinking about the proposal he just received. The old man then encourages him to hear the proposal to the end before making any decisions. He then explains that what he wants to ask has nothing to do with the monster hunt. We are informed that the Order of Knights was founded by a monastic order of a god. The man continues his explanation and says that when they went to hunt the manticore, something happened. Apparently, the priests of the region demanded the forced cooperation of another mage. The leader of the knights is sure that they ended up offending the said mage with their demands. He thinks that a mage's approach will have a much better effect than a knight's. With that, our hero thinks it's not a bad deal to calm the mage and gain an escort. He looks at his sister and the bird and decides to accept the proposal to ensure their safety. The scene cuts to the two siblings journey with the Order of the Knights of Santiago. Traveling with them proved to be incredibly comfortable and safe for the young adventurers. All the members of the order were people of good character, which made the trip very pleasant. For our hero, that journey was completely free of stress and unnecessary worries. But if he had to point out one complaint, it would be that the knights were very insistent. One of them approaches and invites him to study the Bible with them around the campfire. The other knights get excited and also invite him to learn along with all of them. The boy politely refuses the invitation, and the men are shocked and ask why. He didn't expect them to be so insistent about their religion like that. The leader of the knights says it's a shame, and the mage asks what he means by that. The old man explains that if he could hear the voice of God, he could become a cleric of the order. Our hero thinks about the possibility of talking to a god and gets a little curious about the idea. He wonders if he could ask the reason he was reincarnated and about the status window. With that in mind, the young man calls over one of the knights named Dictory, who is reading the Bible. He then changes his mind and says he would like to join the Bible study with them. The knight is happy with the change of heart and starts teaching our hero how to read the book. Time passes, and the young mage remains focused on his reading while Oberon sleeps on his shoulder. Ditchtree praises the boy's good attitude, who is surprised by the sudden and unexpected compliment. He thanks him for the praise and continues reading, but suddenly, something strange starts to happen. The knight asks what's wrong, and the mage replies that he just heard a strange voice. The man is terrified and denies hearing anything, while the boy insists that he did. He then realizes that perhaps the voice he heard wasn't of human origin and gets scared. A mysterious voice then begins to speak in his mind, and he wonders what is happening. The knight backs away, scared, and the mage is confused by the whole situation that has unfolded. The voice then asks if he isn't an entity that cannot be called human, and he is shocked. The boy then points to the sky and shouts, asking if that voice belongs to a god. The voice responds vaguely, saying probably so, leaving the young man even more confused. He then gets angry and starts asking several questions about the status window and his reincarnation. The entity just laughs at the situation, and the mage gets even more irritated by the lack of answers. He demands an immediate response, but the voice simply disappears, leaving him hanging. With that, a blue light envelopes the boy, and he faints in front of the scared knights. One of the men approaches and notices that the young man is unconscious and blindfolded. The protagonist wakes up and realizes that the entity really did abandon him mid-conversation. He then tries to get the mysterious voice's attention, but gets no response in return. Furious, our hero starts shouting and demanding that the god come back immediately to talk. The knights are startled by the boy's sudden outburst and try to calm him down. After that incident, the young mage started studying the holy scriptures like a madman. He just wanted a chance to talk to that god again and clear up his doubts. As a result, he acquired a new skill that allowed him to converse with the absolute being. The system window congratulates him, and he is surprised by how quickly the skill appeared. The message tells him to take more interest in God, and that the more he studies, the happier the being will be. Our hero then realizes that the god who gave him the skill is the author who threw him into that world. Furious, the boy thinks his divine arts level is still too low for a conversation. He then decides there's nothing to do but find more mysteries and gather points. With this goal in mind, he looks up at the starry sky and prepares to strengthen his arts. A few days later, the journey continues, and the group of travelers makes their way through the forest. Suddenly, they are attacked by a group of bandits, and the knights go into combat mode. The order's leader shows his great skill and defeats the enemies with ease and precision. With just one strike, the old man manages to take down one of the bandits, who falls to his knees. After the battle, he approaches the mage and asks with concern if he is okay. The young man confirms that he is fine, and that there were no problems during the bandit attack. The old man sees that the two siblings are fine and is relieved to see that everyone came out unharmed. The mage's sister asks if he got hurt, and he assures her that he is okay as well. With a confident smile, the leader of the knights says that even as an old man, he wouldn't lose to them. Our hero comments that he heard he used to be a mercenary and praises him for it. The old man admits that he may not look like it, but in his youth, he made a great name for himself. He explains that he uses the nickname Elder because many people judge him by his real name. The mage then wonders if that means he is so famous that people would recognize him. The leader of the knights then raises his sword and shouts that they took care of the wicked bandits. His men get excited and shout in celebration of their victory and the group's safety. One of the knights then approaches and warns that the road splits into two paths up ahead. To the east is the Count's castle, and to the west is the forest, where the fearsome manticore usually appears. The old man points in the direction of the forest and says that's where the mage they are looking for lives. He then turns to our hero and looks at him with a serious and expectant gaze. With a smile on his face, the old man tells them to hurry up and find this mage. Our hero asks him to wait, as he needs to talk to his sister about their plans. He turns to the girl and says they will find the mage and then head to the castle. The young woman says she will go on ahead, and the boy asks with concern if she will be okay alone. She assures him she is not a child anymore, and that she will reach her uncle's house in no time. With a smile on her face, the girl says goodbye to her brother and goes on her way through the forest. The two men watch the girl walk away, and the mage wonders if she will really be okay. He then thinks he needs to resolve this quickly, so he can go after his sister as soon as possible. The old man asks where the girl went, and the boy explains she went ahead, and that he will catch up with her. With that, the two continue on their way, and the leader of the knights asks if he is prepared. The boy is confused, and the old man explains that mages are notoriously difficult to deal with. He continues, saying the order angered the mage, so there's no telling what he might do. The young man then asks why they need to clean up the mess the order of knights made. With a goofy look, the old man simply replies that it's because the order paid them. One of the knights appears and says it's only fair, since they received money for the mission. Our hero finally understands why they all wear such good and expensive armor. The old man comforts him and says he's sure the other mage will go easy on him because of him. The boy then prepares for his first encounter with a mage other than his master. As they approach the mage's house, they notice a sinister green energy emanating from the place. Inside the house, the energy spreads everywhere, and several lifeless rats appear. A witch named Monty Campbell prepares a potion in her cauldron with a smile on her face. We are then taken to a flashback where some men ask for the witch's help to capture the manticore. One of them arrogantly reminds the woman that the village is under the order's jurisdiction. The witch gets annoyed by the man's attitude and the way he spoke to her. She then says the least they could do is eat her food with a smile. In a threatening tone, she asks if they are confident they won't run away after smelling it. The witch then turns to the men and invites them to come closer to her boiling cauldron. Back in the present, our hero wonders what a plant mage is and what their specialty is. The old man explains that Monty Campbell is a famous plant mage known for her skills. She not only manipulates plants and vegetation, but also creates terrible drugs and poisons from them. The old man says that to hunt the manticore, they needed a strong poison, which is why they went to her. Suddenly, a horrible smell fills the air, and the knights start to feel very sick. But our hero realizes that the smell is familiar, and that he has smelled it somewhere before. The two then arrive at the witch's door, and prepare for the encounter that awaits them. The door opens, and the witch appears with a scary smile, saying she was waiting for them. The leader of the knights recognizes Monty Campbell, and tries to shield himself from the strong smell emanating from her. She says she is happy they made it, and invites them into her home. With a sinister look, the witch shows them the feast she prepared, featuring a bubbling cauldron. The smell spreads throughout the house, and various strange ingredients are hanging everywhere. Two of the knights can't stand the smell, and start to feel sick from the overwhelming odor. The old man says She didn't need to prove her power that way, and the witch says it was just a dish. She then challenges them, saying that if they aren't guests, they might as well leave the house. The knights continue to feel sick, and one of them even gets sick to his stomach because of the unbearable smell. The man faints, and the witch watches him with a look of contempt and disdain for his weakness. She then wonders if maybe she overdid it a bit with the dose of her spell. But to her surprise, she notices that our hero is eating her soup with a great appetite. She is shocked and wonders who this person is that can eat a soup full of garlic like that. The witch approaches and asks if the boy is okay, and he ignores her and keeps eating. With his mouth full, he finally replies and says the soup is incredibly delicious. The woman is in shock and can't believe he is enjoying her food that much. The young man says the garlic in particular has an amazing flavor and eats a whole clove at once. He continues to eat, and the witch watches him with an expression of pure disbelief and astonishment. She can't take it anymore and yells at him to stop eating her soup with such gusto and eagerness. The witch says that in 40 years as a mage, she's never seen a guy as crazy as him. Impressed by the boy's resistance, the woman, with her arms crossed, asks for his name. He then introduces himself as Anne Meredith Raven, and the witch repeats the last name, Meredith, surprised. With a look of shock and disbelief, the woman points at the boy and stares at him intensely. She recognizes him as the disciple of the Flame Mage, the legendary and powerful Lady Eurydice. Suddenly, the witch falls to the floor, fainted, and our hero is left completely confused by the situation. That night, the witch's house is quiet, and she finally wakes up and apologizes. As an apology, she serves a delicious feast for everyone with lots of meat and drinks. Our hero thinks the stewed chicken from before was already delicious, but the feast was even better. Everyone sits at the table to eat, and the witch asks about the manticore hunt they are planning. With a serious and somber look, she warns that their mission will be anything but easy to complete. She reveals that Count Katina even hired hunters, but they were all defeated by the beast. The old man says he is prepared for that, and the witch asks if he has ever captured a manticore before. He replies that he has done it a few times when he was younger and more experienced in battle. The witch then turns to our hero and asks about him, making the boy a little tense. She looks at him and says that if he was trained by Eurydice, he must be a complete and powerful mage. With a challenging look, the boy asks why she doesn't lend her wisdom to the knights. He remembers his master's teachings about the moment a mage should act. She used to say that this moment should not be taken lightly, and that one must have wisdom. Our hero thinks he doesn't need to capture the manticore, but refusing could bring trouble. The Magic Circle is an organization of mages that ensures the proper use of the world's mysteries. He fears that if he refuses, he won't be able to face his master or ask other mages for help in the future. With a determined look, the boy looks at the knights, who are staring at him with expectation. He then thinks there is no other choice but to accept the challenge that has been proposed to him. With his decision made, he turns to the witch and says he will join them in the monster hunt. The next day, the group ventures into the forest in search of the fearsome and dangerous manticore. The atmosphere of the place is sinister, and our hero feels that something very bad is about to happen. Suddenly, Oberon flies up excitedly and squawks that he found what they were looking for in the forest. The bird returns to its master's shoulder and warns that there is a manticore just ahead of them. The leader of the knights asks what's wrong, and the mage points in the direction indicated by Oberon. The old man is impressed by the crow's ability to communicate and praises the young sorcerer. Our hero thinks it was easy to teach Oberon to talk thanks to his newly acquired skill. The witch feels an incredible killing intent, and the boy takes the opportunity to ask the old man a question. He approaches the man and asks if the manticore is also a monster like the others. With a serious look, the young man asks if it wouldn't be possible to persuade the creature not to attack. The leader of the knights becomes pensive and wonders if that would really be possible to do. But the witch interrupts the conversation and warns that the manticore is not the type you can talk to. In a flashback, the witch shouts that she knows very well what a mystery is and challenges the boy. With a challenging look, the woman says that if he succeeds, she'll tell his master Aretas, everything. The protagonist gets annoyed and thinks that instead of praising him, she's just going to tattle to his master. But suddenly, one of the knights shouts and points to something he found in the middle of the forest. At that, our hero quickly turns around and goes on high alert for whatever is coming. In the darkness of the woods, a pair of glowing eyes stares at them, and the manticore finally appears. The mage then asks the witch and the knight not to leave his side, and the woman agrees. At that moment, one of the soldiers calls for his master, who turns around with a serious and focused look. The leader then informs the group that he has already coated all their weapons with a special poison. He holds 3 arrows coated in a green poison that was developed by Mani herself. With a battle cry, the old man commands his men to fire the poisoned arrows. Our hero watches everything from a distance, waiting attentively to see the result of the attack. The poisoned arrows then fly at high speed toward the monster in the darkness. At an absurd speed, the manticore moves, and an intense blue glow illuminates the forest. One of the arrows hits the beast's neck, but it simply bounces off, doing nothing. The young man is surprised and tells the leader that the projectile ricocheted off the monster's neck. The old man is speechless, and the protagonist asks what their next step is. The creature finally emerges from the shadows, laughing and saying they'll have to attack again. Our hero becomes tense with the situation, and Oberon seems to sense the approaching danger. He realizes the manticore is right in front of them, and there's no time to apply the poison again. So, the young man decides he has no other choice and prepares to use a special ability. With a powerful shout, the boy releases a large amount of energy, surprising everyone. The knights and their leader look back, shocked by the mage's unexpected action. Even the witch is impressed and thinks that the boy really did what he said he would. Alone in front of everyone, the young man faces the gigantic manticore, which observes him with curiosity. The beast then says that he is an unusual human for having the courage to try to speak with it. The young man calms down and says he's relieved the creature understands his words, just like before. He introduces himself as Ein, a mage, and in a comical thought, tells the beast to go away. But in his imagination, the beast just insults him and throws things at him, leaving him speechless. Returning to reality, the monster asks what his problem is and tells the young man to stop stalling. The creature stares at the boy up close and asks if there is something he wants to take from it. With a determined look, the protagonist asks the creature to just say what it wants. The mage then points to the monster's head and says he wants the beast's scalp. The monster starts to laugh so loudly that it startles all the birds in the forest. The creature says the boy is honest, and that's why it likes him a lot. With a sinister look, the manticore calls the mage by name and invites him to join it. It then proposes that they team up to finish off the humans, and the young man is shocked. The beast says that if he accepts, he can taste the flesh of all his enemies, and that after enjoying his prizes, he will have much gold and women at his disposal. With a sick look, the monster says he can get rid of them after he's had his fun. Our hero is clearly disgusted by the proposal, but the creature seems very pleased. Without a word, the protagonist simply spits on the ground in front of the giant monster. He then raises his hand and makes a very rude gesture while calling the creature trash. One of the knights watching from a distance is completely stunned by the mage's attitude. The young man continues to face the creature without fear and says that its proposal is too disgusting. The manticore then gets angry with the response and flies high, ready to attack with everything it has. With a look full of hatred, the beast says the mage's attitude only made it want to defeat him more. At that moment, Oberon flies away as the young man begins to recite a powerful spell. The witch observes the scene from afar and also decides to help using one of her plant spells. She throws a seed on the ground that glows with an intense green light and begins to grow. In a few seconds, a giant plant sprouts from the ground with a magical and intense glow. The plant's vines grow rapidly and wrap around the manticore's body, trapping it. The leader of the knights is impressed with the witch's magic, as he didn't expect it. The two look at the enormous plant structure that holds the beast in the middle of the forest. The old man asks what she did, and the witch sarcastically replies that she ate the manticore. She then jokingly adds that she also ate the knights who were nearby. The woman then yells that they aren't children and will be able to manage on their own. The old man is startled, but the witch tells them to focus on defeating the manticore first. With that, our hero wastes no time and starts moving quickly to the location. He then runs toward his group, shouting for the older man to wait for him. Arriving there, the leader of the knights asks if all his companions are okay. The protagonist looks at him with a worried expression and calls him master with a trembling voice. The knight says they are fine, but it seems something very bad happened to the group. The young man then looks to the side and is shocked by the scene he finds before him. One of the knights, named Dixtry, is on the ground, completely injured after the battle. He apologizes to his master for letting the manticore escape, but the old man hugs him. Our hero observes the scene with an empathetic look and seems to be thinking about something. He then says that everyone did their best and clutches his book with strength and determination. The boy thinks that he never believed he would see someone pass on right in front of him like that. He remembers having talked with Dictry before and feels even sadder about the situation. The young man thinks that now all of this finally seems real and not just a fantasy. He remembers that he is in a world where fighting monsters is a normal and common thing. The passings he saw in stories are now becoming a frightening reality. Without a second thought, the young man runs back to where the injured knight was lying. He then kneels beside Ditchtree, ready to try to help him in some way. With a smile, the mage reminds the man of what he taught him about the Bible and faith. He says that if you truly believe and pray, the heavens will open to answer your prayer. The injured knight starts to cry but smiles and agrees with the young mage's words. Our hero then says for them to pray together, and a blue light begins to shine around him. With his eyes glowing, he looks to the sky and begins to speak with the all-powerful. He says that a die-hard fan of the heavens is here passing on and asks if something can't be done. Suddenly, a mysterious voice responds, saying that his heaven is right there in front of him. The voice asks if they should give it a try since Anne wishes it, and he holds the man's hands. At that moment, an even stronger blue light explodes from the injured knight's body. Everyone else watches the scene in awe as the light takes over the entire forest. The leader of the knights then calls out Anne's name, surprised by what was happening. The injured knight looks at the blue light emanating from the mage's hands and is speechless. Even our hero is surprised by the intensity of the power flowing through him. In a vision, Dmitri is in a celestial place when a voice calls for him to wake up. A woman in white clothes with a divine aura then appears, floating in front of him. The man is completely shocked by the apparition and wonders if she is a goddess. The entity says she is happy to see him, and the knight bows in a gesture of respect. He then wonders why God is there and realizes that place must be heaven, but the goddess warns him that he still has things to do and cannot stay there for now. Confused, the man asks what kind of things he would still need to do in life. She points at him and says his mission is to make her even more known among the people. The entity asks him to help the weak and fill them with happiness through his good deeds. And as a final wish, she asks him to help her apostle named Anne in the mortal world. Suddenly, the knight's eyes open, and he awakens from his celestial vision. The leader and the other soldiers are shocked to see that their friend is awake and conscious. Dmitri sits up, confused, and looks around, trying to understand where he is and what happened. Our hero then approaches and calls him by name with a calm and peaceful look. With a smile on his face, the mage asks how it feels to come back from the other side. The man jumps up and grabs the young man's staff, asking what he is doing. Crying, he asks if he was ordered by that great figure to save him from his end. The protagonist is a bit embarrassed by the exaggerated reaction of the revived knight. He thinks that he was able to use the divine arts because his church lent him power. The mage then asks how the man knew and says that God sent him to save him because he has tasks to do. At that moment, Dmitri remembers the exact words of the goddess in his celestial vision. He is completely stunned and covers his mouth with his hand, unable to believe what he heard. Our hero laughs victoriously as the knight bows, calling him an apostle of God. The other soldiers think it's an exaggeration to call him an apostle and decide to watch him. The whole group gathers again with Dimitri, now kneeling in front of the young mage. The witch comments that everyone is very energetic, even after almost passing on. The leader then gets excited and asks if they should go after the manticore again now. The young man says he will send Oberon to scout, and the old man worries about the crow. Our hero replies no, and the crow flies into the sky to begin scouting. The leader of the knights is confused by the answer, but the mage has a plan in mind. Remembering the creature, the young man thinks that it's not some ordinary trash and needs to be taken seriously. With a determined look, he says they need to completely crush the creature. Meanwhile, in a nearby town, screams of despair echo through the streets at dusk. The manticore had arrived at the location and was now causing chaos among the residents. In the midst of the confusion, a young man and his father run desperately to try to escape the beast. But in a moment of carelessness, the old man stumbles and lets go of his son's hand, falling. The young man turns and shouts for his father, who is on the ground, helpless and scared. He then looks back and is completely horrified by the scene he sees next. The manticore slowly approaches his father with a hungry and malicious look. But suddenly, the son stands in front of the old man to protect him from the creature's attack. With courage, he shouts for the monster to leave that town and let everyone be. The young man then grabs a rake and prepares to fight the beast to protect his father. The creature laughs and asks if that human is really his father and how he speaks their language. The beast makes a sick proposal and tells the young man to eliminate his own father and bring him. In return, it promises to spare the lives of all the other humans in the city. The son refuses to believe the proposal and hugs his father to protect him from the monster. With a wicked smile, the creature says that then there is no other way to resolve this. With a cry of hatred, the beast raises its sharp claw, ready to strike them both. At the last second, the father pushes his son away to save him from the creature's blow. A beam of white light then hits the old man in a blow that makes him pass on. Suddenly, the leader of the knights appears with a look of pure fury on his face. He then lands a powerful and precise punch right in the middle of the manticore's face. The son kneels beside his father and sees the Knights of Santiago arriving to help. The leader then shouts for his men to prepare for battle against the monster. The knights then advance in combat formation, ready to face the beast. The entire group of knights then faces the creature, ready to fight until the end. The beast gets irritated and calls them insects, asking if they are so eager to be done with. It then notices that one of the arrows from before is still stuck in its ear. From a distance, our hero calls the creature an idiot for attacking a town. The young man observes the scene with contempt and says that their fight will lead nowhere. With that, the beast becomes furious with the taunt and yells for the mage to shut up. But the mage just scoffs and says, "That's just the howl of a big loser." The creature gets angry at the insult and charges with full force at the young sorcerer. At an absurd speed, the beast runs toward the young man, kicking up dust wherever it goes. Our hero, however, doesn't seem the least bit scared and faces the creature with a smile. But suddenly, the monster realizes something is wrong and that the young man is no longer there. In his place, the witch and the leader of the knights appear to intercept the beast's attack. The woman then wastes no time and uses her vegetation magic to attack the monster. A seed glows with an intense green light and begins to grow rapidly on the ground. Large vines then sprout from the ground and wrap around the creature's body, trapping it. Seizing the chance, the leader of the knights yells for his men to attack now. With that, two of his soldiers throw pots full of oil toward the manticore. The pots break, and the flammable liquid completely covers the monster's body. The creature becomes furious with their strategy and yells that they are using cheap tricks. Then the witch turns and shouts the mage's full name, saying it's now his turn. Our hero then concentrates and prepares to finally finish off the creature. He points his staff and yells for the fire to begin and burn the beast completely. The reflection of the flames then appears in the creature's eyes as it stands frozen. In an instant, a pillar of fire rises to the heavens and completely engulfs the manticore. The flames continue to burn intensely, as the mage watches his spell. After the battle, the townspeople thank the knights for saving the city, but all the praise goes to the leader while our hero is forgotten in the background. Oberon notices and asks if his master feels left out, and he tells the crow to shut up. The young man thinks they are probably afraid of him for turning the beast into fire, but suddenly, a voice calls him from behind, interrupting his thoughts about what happened. He turns and sees the father and son who were saved, thanking him for his help in the fight. The protagonist is a bit embarrassed by the thanks and says he didn't do it for that. At that moment, the leader of the knights approaches and calls the young mage by name. The young man tries to explain, saying he just followed the witch's orders, but the leader praises him for a job well done. The old man is then impressed by the young man's humility for someone with so much power and admires him. He thinks that with this personality, the mage will win over the nobles and become someone important. Suddenly, footsteps are heard in the middle of the city, and a new group of people approaches. The newcomers then ask if by chance they were the ones who managed to capture the dangerous manticore. With that, the mage asks who they are, and one of the men introduces himself as a knight from the castle. The soldier apologizes for intruding but asks if they could accompany them there. He then reveals that His Excellency, Count Katina, has asked for them to be invited to the castle. Arriving at the location, a voice welcomes them and greets the brave warriors who saved the city. A grand banquet is served for them as thanks for facing the monster. Count Katina praises them and says they are a group of truly righteous individuals, but the leader of the knights replies that it was nothing and that they were just doing their duty. One of the count's knights laments that their castle doesn't have such competent soldiers. The count then turns to the witch and assures her that his associates will no longer interfere with her house. Then he turns to the protagonist and says he has heard a lot about him from his niece. The young mage, however, is so busy eating that he doesn't even pay attention to what the man is saying. Oberon then informs his master that the man is trying to talk to him, but the young man doesn't stop. The count feels completely ignored by the mage's attitude and is shocked by the disrespect. The protagonist finally stops eating and looks at the man with a questioning expression. He apologizes and says the food was too good and he was just talking to the crow. The man says he heard the mage took very good care of his niece, and a servant brings a chest. The young man then opens the chest, and a very intense golden light shines from within, blinding him. Inside the chest, he finds what appears to be a completely golden magic scroll. The scroll opens, revealing magical writings and explaining that it activates when torn. Our hero is surprised to find that it's an immediate activation magic scroll. He thinks the item is incredible and that every word written on it seems to be of high quality. The count then asks if he liked the gift, as it was prepared especially for the young man. With a smile, the mage thanks him for the precious gift he received from the mysterious man. The nobleman says it was nothing, as the young man brought his niece Lucy back safely. With a satisfied smile, Count Tina makes a small, strange gesture with his fingers. The young man tries to explain, saying he just followed the witch's orders, but the leader praises him for a job well done. The old man is then impressed by the young man's humility for someone with so much power and admires him. He thinks that with this personality, the mage will win over the nobles and become someone important. Suddenly, footsteps are heard in the middle of the city, and a new group of people approaches. The newcomers then ask if by chance they were the ones who managed to capture the dangerous manticore. With that, the mage asks who they are, and one of the men introduces himself as a knight from the castle. The soldier apologizes for intruding but asks if they could accompany them there. He then reveals that His Excellency, Count Katina, has asked for them to be invited to the castle. Arriving at the location, a voice welcomes them and greets the brave warriors who saved the city. A grand banquet is served for them as thanks for facing the monster. Count Katina praises them and says they are a group of truly righteous individuals. But the leader of the knights replies that it was nothing, and that they were just doing their duty. One of the count's knights laments that their castle doesn't have such competent soldiers. The count then turns to the witch and assures her that his associates will no longer interfere with her house. Then he turns to the protagonist and says he has heard a lot about him from his niece. The young mage, however, is so busy eating that he doesn't even pay attention to what the man is saying. Oberon then informs his master that the man is trying to talk to him, but the young man doesn't stop. The count feels completely ignored by the mage's attitude and is shocked by the disrespect. The protagonist finally stops eating and looks at the man with a questioning expression. He apologizes and says the food was too good, and he was just talking to the crow. The man says he heard the mage took very good care of his niece, and a servant brings a chest. The young man then opens the chest, and a very intense golden light shines from within, blinding him. Inside the chest, he finds what appears to be a completely golden magic scroll. The scroll opens, revealing magical writings and explaining that it activates when torn. Our hero is surprised to find that it's an immediate activation magic scroll. He thinks the item is incredible and that every word written on it seems to be of high quality. The count then asks if he liked the gift, as it was prepared especially for the young man. With a smile, the mage thanks him for the precious gift he received from the mysterious man. The nobleman says it was nothing, as the young man brought his niece Lucy back safely. With a satisfied smile, Count Katina makes a small, strange gesture with his fingers. With a shocked face, Lucy points to the old man and says that he is a legendary figure. The knight then smiles with an air of confidence and pride in his glorious past. The girl then reveals that the man is the legendary and powerful sword master, but our hero doesn't seem impressed at all and shows a complete lack of interest. The young woman then yells at the young man and says the old man is a true living legend. The sword master laughs and says that reaction is typical of the mage, leaving the young man confused. The knights think the mage wants to defeat the master, who lost his talent long ago. The old man just laughs at the situation and says it's no big deal, so as not to cause trouble. The witch and the knight prepare to leave, and he asks the young man to give a message to Elidis. Dmitri thanks the mage and says they need to see each other again, but the young man doesn't like the idea. The sword master then turns and calls the mage's name for a final farewell. The two then shake hands in a gesture of respect and newfound friendship. With a smile, the young man says that when things calm down, he will go to the ruins of Trifaro. The old man smiles happily and says that then they will meet again soon in the future. The two then say their goodbyes, and the knight asks the mage to take care of himself until then. Meanwhile, Count Katina is on a platform, giving a speech to his army of soldiers. Beside him, Lucy watches and calls out to her uncle with an expression of worry and sadness. Crying, the young woman begs her uncle to punish the person who finished off her mother. The nobleman then thinks of the name Graham with a dark and resentful look. He remembers that the man took his sister's life and tried to force Lucy to marry. The nobleman thinks he can use the girl as a shield and marry her off to one of his vassals. With this, he could gain total control of the Italian barony for his own plans. Our hero thinks that when this is all over, he will have a serious talk with Lucy about the matter. On the platform, the nobleman shouts that he will bring the Avenger to justice, and the soldiers cheer him on. With a raised fist, he commands everyone to follow him, and the soldiers shout in response. Later that night, the Count's army is camped, ready for the expedition. At a campfire, a large cauldron with water and spoons boils intensely in the camp. Lucy and the soldiers ask what Anne is doing, and he replies that he is boiling spoons. The girl then wonders why, and if they are going to eat the spoons while the others have dinner. Two soldiers comment on the spoon soup, and the mage thinks they're fools for not knowing. Lucy is confused by the term and asks the mage what sterilization means. The young man replies that it's a type of mystery, and she wouldn't understand even if he explained. The two soldiers then hear the word mystery and seem to have a brilliant idea. With that, the men approach the mage and the girl with a special request for them. Holding large pieces of meat, they ask if the young man can boil it for them. Our hero gets irritated with the request and shouts that this isn't a soup for cooking. The night continues at the camp, and the soldiers gather around the campfires to rest. Lucy then gets Ein's attention, saying she's been thinking about something, and he asks what it is. She remembers when he helped her, and says she was thinking about his reward. The young woman explains that she was going to give him gold, but he already received plenty, so she thought of something else. She says she thought about what would make him happy, and he becomes curious to know the outcome of her decision. The girl reveals that his reward is the magic sword Anorigil, a gift from a fairy. The legend says that the Baron fell in love with the fairy and became the savior of the fairy kingdom. While Lucy is excited, the young man thinks it sounds like a fantasy romance story. He asks why the Talions are still just barons with such an incredible sword like that. The young woman replies that this story is already 400 years old and is too old to be remembered. The protagonist then asks what else there is to know about the family's legendary magic sword. She reveals that Anorigil is buried in the tomb of the first Baron, leaving them both shocked. The mage then realizes that to get the sword, they would have to unearth a tome. He finds it very strange for a descendant to dig up her ancestor's tome to give away the sword. The young man asks if she treats the tome like a time capsule, and she doesn't understand at all. He says the sword seems valuable and asks if she shouldn't use it for her family. He suggests it would be better than being used by people who only care about her noble title. The young woman says she hasn't reclaimed anything yet, but thanks to him, she has a chance to fight. She explains that's why she appreciates his help so much, and that he deserves something valuable in return. With a red face, she yells that this is why she is giving him that precious heirloom. Then the girl calls him an idiot and runs off while the maid shouts her name, worried. With a hand on his head, the young man thinks that maybe he went too far with his words. Suddenly, one of the soldiers approaches and calls out to the mage, who was distracted looking into the distance. The man then informs him that the Count has a special request to make of the young sorcerer. Night falls on the camp, and the expedition prepares for a new day's journey. In a nearby town, however, a man argues with soldiers and calls them thieves. One of the soldiers scoffs and says that if he hands over 3 chickens, they will leave him alone. He then approaches and says he has a battle to fight and can't go on an empty stomach. But suddenly, the 3 soldiers are startled by a strange noise coming from nearby. They look up and see a crow that looks like the one the mage has on his shoulder. The bird then calls out excitedly and tells everyone that its master has finally arrived. The men are completely shocked by what they see and shout that the crow is talking. Suddenly, a voice comes from behind them, and the 3 slowly turn to look. With faces full of fear, the soldiers stare at the figure that appeared in the middle of the night. Our hero then emerges from the shadows and asks what they think they are doing there. Later that night, candlelight illuminates a tent in the middle of the camp. Inside, Count Katana calls Anne's name and says he has a favor to ask of him. The young man notices that the man is hesitant and wonders what kind of favor it could be. The nobleman then asks the mage to stop the crimes of the mercenaries in that city. The protagonist asks if that wouldn't be a job for the castle's knights. The man explains that his knights are on the side of the mercenaries and cover up their crimes. He says he could even ignore small lootings to keep up morale, but the situation has worsened. The mage remembers Lucy asking him to take care of her land and makes a decision. He thinks that if the nobleman doesn't want to get his hands dirty, then he should do the job himself. With a determined look, the young man thinks that the mercenaries will think twice now. He then imagines a frightening shadow behind the men who invade houses like thieves. With a shout, the young man says that this is a punishment and that he will make an example of them. The soldiers apologize and say they've learned their lesson, and the mage sends them away. After that day, the town finally seems to have regained some peace. The young man and Oberon began capturing the mercenaries, who were causing trouble in the region. As a result, they became so afraid that they stopped leaving their homes to avoid being caught. When the Count and Lucy heard the news, they were extremely happy and relieved. However, one day, one of the soldiers approaches the nobleman with a serious expression. He then informs his lord that they have a very serious problem on their hands. The result of the soldier's investigation reveals that they have an unexpected and grave problem. He informs them that their army is no longer a threat to the usurpers of the territory. Our hero is confused and asks how that is possible with more than 400 troops. The man explains that since their forces cannot act freely, They have become harmless. He says that if the army had pillaged, the people of Tarion would have protested against Graham. But since the enemy already has Tarion in their hands, the people have no reason to revolt. Since their march was restrained so as not to harm the civilians, the enemy has grown stronger. With this, Graham gained time to gather his own troops and now has the support of the people. With the army unable to move and morale low, their situation became quite complicated. Our hero then thinks that the soldier is right and that things have gotten very strange. The soldier asks his lord if they should allow the looting, but the nobleman hesitates. Lucy then turns to the mage and asks if he has any way to fix this. The young woman looks at him with an expression full of expectation, hoping for a solution to the problem. The young man thinks for a moment and replies that there might be a way to solve it. The count and the girl ask him to tell them quickly, and the young man thinks for a bit before speaking. The young woman is happy with the answer, but the nobleman thinks the mage is getting too cocky. Our hero then leaves the tent and finds some of the count's soldiers waiting outside. Meanwhile, somewhere in Tarion territory, two soldiers are talking to each other. Inside a house, a man shouts at a crow on the window to shut its beak. He gets irritated by the bird's noise and insults it, calling it a cursed crow as he glares at it. But suddenly, the man is startled when he senses a presence and asks, "Who is there?" Outside, our hero asks if he is the owner of the nearby wheat field. One of the soldiers then introduces the young man as Anarides, the apprentice of the sorceress Iritis. The man is completely terrified upon hearing the name, and his expression changes instantly. He then kneels and begs for forgiveness for his rudeness, as he didn't know who he was. The protagonist just sighs, tired of the man's exaggerated reaction to his presence. He then says that the wheat is a lost cause, and the man asks what he means. With his staff, the mage reveals a malevolent energy that is corrupting the field's soil. He explains that a malevolent stain has soaked that field, and a red aura surrounds it. The spirit of the first Baron Tarion, who was robbed of his land, now haunts the place. The man falls to his knees, crying, and asks what they should do now about the curse. Our hero then interrupts him with a shout and tells the frightened man to be quiet. With a serious and focused look, the mage prepares to reveal the solution to the problem. He shouts that the heavens have spoken and that the Baron's anger will only be appeased if Lucy inherits the title. The mage then says he feels more bad vibrations and runs off with the soldiers, leaving the man behind. The field owner is left behind, thinking that because of the usurper, his land is ruined. After a while, rumors spread, and a soldier tells the count that he doesn't need to worry. The man says that if his presence is such a bother, he can simply withdraw from the contest. The enemy's banner is pelted with tomatoes, and the people begin to turn against the usurper. But the mage warns Lucy that she shouldn't expect him to help her on her journey. The count's soldiers celebrate the change in the situation, hugging each other happily. With the rumors spreading, the people of Tarion begin to doubt the usurper Graham. To escape the bad luck, they started demanding that Lucy take the throne as the heir. Thanks to this, the Count's army regained its spirit and marched to Graham's stronghold. But a soldier reports that they refused to fight on a dishonorable battlefield. He explains that Ain spread the rumor of the curse, and that he is causing the problem. The knights believe their honor will be tarnished if they associate with a mage like that. The protagonist wonders why they believe the rumors, and that a mage can't be trusted. He then realizes that their logic is correct, and that he himself created this problem. The soldiers think the mage is trying to trick them, and can't see the truth. The nobleman listens to everything attentively, and seems to be thinking of a solution to the stalemate. He thinks that the knights have decided it's all a lie, and that this is a ridiculous stance. The mage knows that the knights are the stars of the war, and the Count's face shows it. The nobleman understands that without his knights, there is no real battle to be fought. In the end, he has no choice but to listen to them, and the mage thinks there's no reason to stay. But just as the young man is about to leave, one of the knights calls